Okay, continuation on the discussion of part 2. Continuation. Second, we proceed now with the different kinds of obligations. Okay, different kinds of obligations. There are 7 different kinds of obligations in general. Okay, number 1, pure and conditional. 2, obligations with period. 3, alternative and facultative. 4, joint and solidary. 5, divisible and indivisible. 6, obligations with a penal clause. So there are 6. Okay, there are 6 pala na kinds of obligations in general. We proceed first with the pure and conditional obligations. What is this so-called pure and conditional obligations? Question. Define pure and conditional obligations and suspensive and resolutory condition. A pure obligation is one which is demandable at once. From the word pure, okay? Those that are demandable at once. Minsanan lang daw demandable. There are no conditions imposed except if they are resolutory in nature. So there are no conditions in a pure. Remember that a pure yan is demandable at once lang. There are no conditions imposed except, okay, if they are resolutory. Lagyan nyo ng star yan, ibibigay ko yan sa quiz. While a conditional obligations are those where the acquisition of a right or the extinguishment or loss of those already acquired shall depend, okay, from the word conditional, depend upon the happening of an event which constitutes the condition. Next, we go with suspensive and resolutory condition. What is a resolutory condition? Diba? Doon sa pure obligation to. Resolutory condition is one which is demandable at once, but the happening of an event would extinguish the obligation. While in a suspensive condition is one where the happening of an event gives rise to an obligation. Huwag kayong malito sa resolutory at suspensive, pure at saka conditional. Ang pure obligation, generally walang condition kasi pure nga siya. Okay? So, the only exemption is that pag they are resolutory condition. Sa conditional obligation naman, obviously, may conditions ito. Okay? Ano ang resolutory condition na sinasabi? Ang resolutory condition na to, the happening of an event will extinguish the obligation. While in a suspensive condition, the happening of an event will give rise to an obligation. For example, of suspensive condition, I will give you 1 million if you will pass the bar exam. Okay? Habang nagre-review ka pa lang ng bar exam, wala akong obligasyon sa yung 1 milyon. Okay? Pagkapasa mo ng bar exam, doon lang ako nagkaroon ng obligasyon. Anong obligasyon ko? That is to give you 1 million pesos. On the other way around, ang resolutory condition naman, ganito. I will give you 100 pesos every day until you pass the bar exam. Ang resolutory, hanggang hindi ka pumapasa ng bar exam, bibigyan kita ng 100 pesos every day. Yun ang resolutory. Okay? Pagkapasa na pagkapasa mo ng bar exam, magi-stop na yung obligasyon ko Okay? It will now extinguish my obligation to give you 100 pesos every day. Well, suspensive naman from the word suspense. Okay? Saka pa lang mag-a-arise yung obligasyon ko. Na ang obligasyon kong yun is, on the given case, give you 1 million pesos. Next question. What is the effect if an obligation depends upon the sole will of the debtor? Binigay ko sa inyo. Ano daw ang effect ng obligasyon na nakadepende lang sa dun sa magpe-perform ng obligation, the debtor. The debtor is the passive. Okay, yung magpe-perform ng obligasyon. It will render the obligation void. So, parang walang obligasyon, di ba? Void yung obligation. Under Article 1182, it provides that under the law, when the fulfillment of the condition depends upon the sole will of the debtor, the conditional obligation shall be void. Example ng case. The contract between A and B provides that the term or period of this contract shall be as long as the party of the first part has need for the electric light post of the party of the second part. Is the contract valid? Yes or no? Why? No, because the condition is potestative, as it depends upon the sole will of the debtor. Remember that a potestative condition, from the word potestative condition is a condition which the fulfillment of which depends upon the sole will of the debtor, in which case the conditional obligation is void. This is provided under your Article 1182 of your new Civil Code. Okay? Kasi mapapansin nyo dun sa case, nakalagay, di ba na? As long as the party, di ba? Hanggang kailangan lang daw ng party. Di parang nakalagay yun sa batas na bawal yun. Kasi nakasalalay sa isang party lang. Yung party na yun is yung debtor. Next question. Suppose na yung kontrata, ito ang nakalagay. It being understood that this contract shall terminate when, for any reason whatsoever, the party of the second part is forced to stop, abandon its operation as a public service, and it becomes necessary to remove the electric light post. Question: is the contract valid or void? Why? The contract is valid because the fulfillment of the obligation, it does not depend upon the sole will of the debtor. The conditions imposed are casual conditions since they depend upon the chance, hazard, or the will of a third person. Okay, hindi na siya dun sa debtor. In the sum, the contract is subject to mixed conditions. Next. When do the effects of the fulfillment of a condition in an obligation to give retroact? Explain. The effects of conditional obligations to give, once the condition has been fulfilled, shall retroact to the day of the constitution of the obligation. Okay? The principle of retroactivity applies only to consensual contracts. In real contracts, ang real contracts yung to give, di ba? To give, to do or not to do. Yung real contracts yung to give or to deliver. In real contracts which involves to give or to deliver, there is an immediate delivery. In consensual ones, delivery may be done on another day. Okay, next. What is the effect if an obligation such as impossible conditions are imposed? Ano daw ang mangyayari sa mga obligasyon na ang condition is impossible? Possible na mangyari. ito ang sagot ng Supreme Court, Article 1183. Impossible conditions, those that are contrary to good customs or public policy, and those that are prohibited by law shall annul the obligation which depends upon them. Okay? So, hindi lang yung mga impossible condition, kundi pati na rin yung mga contrary to law, good customs, public policy. It shall annul or void the contract. Okay. However, kinig, if the obligation is divisible, ibig sabihin, pwedeng hatiin, pwedeng isang valid, yung isa void. That part where it is not affected by the impossible or unlawful condition, it shall be valid and retained. Okay? For example, dun sa kontrata, okay, 4 ang obligasyon niya. Isa dun impossible, yung isa dun against law, okay? At isa naman dun is against public policy. Tapos yung isa naman valid naman. Okay. In that case, for example, 4 ang i-deliver. Okay? Let's just say, once that is impossible, i-deliver yung moon. Okay, moon, yung buwan. Number 2, i-deliver shabu. That's illegal. That's against law. Number 3, let's say, against public customs. Ano pa ba? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm lost. Again, what is the effect if in an obligation there is this so-called impossible condition? It will annul the obligation. Not only those that are impossible condition, but those that are contrary to good customs, public policy, and those that are prohibited by law shall annul the obligation. For example, you have the obligation to deliver 1 kilogram of shabu, the panties of your neighbor, you have to deliver the moon, sky, and the stars, and lastly to deliver a cake. When the obligation is divisible, yung tatlo, impossible, contrary to good customs, and contrary to law, yung isa valid, so you can still perform the other obligation. Next, what rules shall be followed in cases of improvement, loss, or deterioration of the thing during dependency of a condition in an obligation to give or to deliver? Listen. When the conditions have been imposed with the intention of suspending the efficacy of an obligation to give, the following rules shall be observed in case of improvement, loss, or deterioration of the thing during dependency of the condition. 1. There are 6 rules. Take down of the following. 1. If the thing is lost without the fault of the debtor, the obligation shall be extinguished. 2. If the thing is lost through the fault of the debtor, he shall be obliged to pay the damages. Here, it is understood that the thing is lost when it perishes, goes out of commerce, or disappears in such way that its existence is unknown or it cannot be recovered anymore. 3. When the thing deteriorates, pansin nyo yung 1 at 2 lost yun. Number 3, deterioration naman. When the thing deteriorates without the fault of the debtor, the impairment shall be borne by the creditor. Okay? 4. If it deteriorates through the fault of the debtor, the creditor may choose between the rescission or cancellation of the obligation and its fulfillment with the indemnity in either case. So, for example, deterioration. Kung yung i-deliver sa'yo is, for example, nasira. Pero pwede pa namang, for example, may kasgas, kumbaga. It deteriorates its value. Magde-deliver sana sa'yo ng cellphone. Yung na-deliver sa yung cellphone, may kasgas. Brand new yung in-order mo. Ngayon, generally, kung walang kasalanan yung debtor, for example, it's through the fault of the courier, okay? The impairment shall be borne by the creditor, okay? Merong right to demand, okay? Pero pag kasalanan naman ng debtor, ang creditor, meron siyang dalawang choices. One, pwede niyang i-cancel. Ikaw na magbabayad dun sa cellphone. Ay, wag na. Kasalanan mo pala . Sasabihin mo. Tapos, hindi, wag na. Hindi ko na babayaran yan. Pa-cancel mo na lang. Number 2, you have also the right to fulfillment. Sige, akin, bayaran ko na yan. Tapos, mag-claim ako ng damages. Kasi nabawasan yung value ng cellphone. Next, we go with improvement. Number 5, if the thing is improved by its nature or by time, the improvement shall inure to the benefit of the creditor. Okay? Number 6, if it is improved at the expense of the debtor, he shall have no other right than the granted of that of usufructuary. Ang ibig sabihin lang nito, kung for example, yung may bumili ka ng nagre-rent ka ng bahay. Example ko sa inyo to para mas maintindihan nyo. Nagre-rent ka ng bahay. Ngayon, nagkaroon ng bagyo, may mga wash out, ganyan. Ngayon, ikaw yung nagre-rent ha. Tapos bigla na lang, mga 1 month after nung bagyo, may mga tumutubong seedlings. May tumubong mangga, ganyan. Tumubong inyog. May tumubong kamatis, okra. Ngayon, hindi ka na namamalengke ha. So, the thing improved by its nature. Yung premises na pinagre-rentahan mo, it improved by its nature and by time. The improvement shall inure to the benefit of the creditor. It will inure to your benefit. However, if it improve at the expense of the debtor, for example, ang gumastos is yung debtor, then you shall only have the right to usufructuary. Next, let's go with the delay. X sold and delivered a car to Y with the agreement that after 5 days, Y would pay the amount of 200,000 to X. X filed an action for rescission of the contract on the ground that Y failed to pay the price. Will the action prosper? Yes or no? Yes, the action will prosper because in case of reciprocal obligation, the power to rescind is implied if the obligor should not comply with the obligation that is incumbent upon him. This is provided under Article 1181. In this case, si Y failed to pay his obligation. Hindi siya nagbayad ng 200,000. Hence, X has the right to ask for rescission. So, supposing that the delay in the payment was for only 1 day, diba may given siya ng 5 days. On the 6th day, dun lang siya nagbayad. Will the answer be the same as above? So, the answer is no. Because it is a rule that in order that the rescission may be availed of, the breach must be substantial and fundamental as to defeat the objective of the parties. Accordingly, the breach on the part of Y is only a simple one and should not be made to defeat the objective of the parties in entering into a contract because the law is not concerned with such issues. Again, suppose that in the contract referred to, there's a reservation of the right to rescind or cancel in case of breach of the obligation. Is there a need to ask for judicial intervention in the rescission of the contract? Kailangan mo pa daw bang pumunta sa korte para ipa-cancel yung kontrata? Anong rason? The answer is no. Judicial intervention is not necessary for the purpose of obtaining a judicial declaration rescinding a contract where there is a reserved right to rescind. But the extrajudicial rescission is contestable in court because it is a final award of the court of competent jurisdiction that can be conclusively settled whether the rescission was proper or not. Okay, another case. X entered into a contract for the purchase of 2 lots from Y. Gusto niyang bumili ng lupa, 2 lote. Each lot cost 100,000. X had already paid 70,000 for each lot. So may balance siyang 30,000 each lot, so 60,000. When he failed to pay his monthly installment because he had been removed from office, Y filed an action for rescission of both contracts contending that there was a breach of the obligation. Will the action prosper? Why? The reason is no. Okay? Because rescission of both contracts would result in unfairness. Okay? One's contract should subsist, considering that the payments made, if added, would be more than sufficient to enough for the purchase of one of the lots. In the case of Legarda versus Saldana, the Supreme Court said that the installments paid were sufficient to answer for one of the lots. Hence, it would be unfair to rescind both. Rescission of one would be sufficient.